Well, good evening, everyone. Tonight we gather virtually across Australia for a very important cause. For many years, NALAG has hosted its annual Walk Towards Hope event in multiple communities. An event which focuses on increasing awareness of the many suicide prevention and crisis support services around Australia that share the common goal of ensuring no person faces their darkest moments alone. We also come together this evening to show our support for the families, friends and communities who have lost a loved one to suicide. So tonight's event will run for approximately 20 minutes, culminating in a candlelight remembrance service where you are invited to light a candle in memory of a loved one lost to suicide and as a sign of hope. Hope for continued healing, hope for prevention, hope for support. Although online, tonight is a community event and you are more than welcome to comment and post a photo of your candle in the comments below during the remembrance service. Before the remembrance service, though, we'll chat with a number of mental health workers and advocates for suicide prevention and support, including Camilla Herbig from the Rural Adversity Mental Health Program and Bruno Efoti, founder of Tradies Insight, men's mental health charity. On World Suicide Prevention Day, we gather here to connect and support each other, to learn, to grow as a community and to show others that they are not alone. We're here to remind ourselves that it's okay to talk about suicide and that it's okay to struggle with the grief associated with losing someone to suicide. Even in these current unprecedented times of isolation, we still manage to find a way to connect, care, support and remind each other that it's okay to reach out and speak up when we're struggling. I'd like to start by acknowledging our First Nations people, the traditional owners of the land on which we now call Australia. NALAG New South Wales thanks you for sharing your country with us. I now invite Trudy Hanson, CEO of NALAG New South Wales, to officially welcome us to tonight's special event.
Thank you, Brenda. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on World Suicide Prevention Day and Are You OK Day. Whilst we're unable to proceed with our annual Walk Towards Hope event this year, I'm pleased that we've embraced technology and can show our support for each other via the wonders of the internet. When we experience tough times, Australians are renowned for getting in and sharing the load. Teamwork and mateship are some of the great strengths of the Aussie spirit. We all know just how powerful it is to feel supported and valued. I'm sure you'll hear a lot of that during tonight's event, and I hope that if there's one thing that you can take away from tonight, it's that support equals strength. Consider how you can better support people in your life, friends, family, colleagues, community members, and take time to acknowledge your own support networks, the people, groups, services that are out there for you. And for over 40 years, NALAG has been one of the leading providers of grief support throughout New South Wales. Even though throughout the current pandemic, our team of staff and volunteers across the state are here for you. Even if it's just a cuppa and a chat to take some weight off your shoulders, please reach out and know that support is always available. Together, through support, mateship, hope, we can get through tough times.
Thank you, Trudy. And as Trudy mentioned, this year's event is not as physical as we would prefer, so it's important for us to remind everyone that crisis support is always available by contacting any of the services that you see on the screen now. For those that don't know, NALAG's Walk Towards Hope is an annual event which takes place in a number of communities, usually each September, to raise awareness of suicide prevention and bereavement support services. Joan Talbot has attended every one of NALAG's Walk Towards Hope events since she lost her son Shannon to suicide 12 years ago. Earlier this week, NALAG's Deputy President Jen Cowley caught up with Joan to hear about Joan's grief journey and the importance of reaching out and talking more openly about suicide.
So this year we're not able to do the actual walk, so we're doing the event virtually.
Yeah.
But how important is it to you that you mark Shannon's death that way and you remember Shannon? How important is that Walk Towards Hope for you each year?
I think it's very important because over the years it's grown, and you meet people that you've seen for, the 12 years or whatever. You see the new people coming, and you have your little chats and things like that, which I find is really, really good. It's nice to see. It's nice to see that people can come out and mark the day, which is, I think, is important.
So that ritual of remembering is important.
People can start to open up about it that haven't. In the beginning, people would not say anything, but now people are talking about what has happened, and so I think that's good. I think it's good communication with people.
People find it hard enough to talk to somebody who has suffered some sort of loss or bereavement.
Yeah.
But they find it particularly hard to speak to people who are bereaved through suicide. What are the sorts of things that you found helpful, and also importantly, what are the sorts of things that you found unhelpful?
The things that hurt is knowing that you have friends that used to come to your house or you would go and have a coffee with that just seem to shy away from you. Whether they're too frightened to say anything or what, I don't know. But I actually asked a couple of my friends why things had changed. Was it because of Shannon? And it really was no answer to it. So that was just dropped, because they didn't want to face it. It wasn't that I couldn't face it, it was that they didn't want to. So
that can be very isolating, can't it?
It is, very isolating. And it's sad that people, this day and age, that people can't sit and talk about suicide, but a lot of people can't even talk about death. But, when you look at suicide, it's a hard thing to accept, but you have to accept it sooner or later, and otherwise it will bring you down. It will destroy you.
So, what would you say to people who are who have friends who are bereaved through suicide, or family? What would you say to them in terms of how they might be able to help those who are bereaved through suicide?
Is to take the time to talk. Take the time to show people that they care, and to talk about it, because I think by talking you're letting go of a lot of your feelings, and somebody's there listening to you, and that's a big thing, is for somebody to listen to you, even if they don't say a word and you just babble on. It's just, you do need to talk.
Could you talk to me a little bit about what you were saying earlier about that sense, the constant why and the questions, and how that feels and how you deal with that?
It's a dreadful feeling. You're always wondering why did this happen? And you sort of, and if you keep going that way, if you don't give up, it will eat you away. You have to come to terms with yourself that this has got to stop, because you're not going to get that answer. You're not going to get the answer. I tried. I pieced things together. I was bitter towards people, and it took me 5 years to get over that, because I knew I had to, because I couldn't go on just blaming everybody else for that.
Have you been able to forgive Shannon?
Yes. It took a long time. Yes, it took a long time, but yes, I do forgive him. But every day I wonder what he looks like and things like that, things that it would have been lovely to see him grow up and have his children and things like that, but it didn't go that way, so you just have to accept it.
Finally, what would be your advice to people who perhaps are struggling with their loss?
I believe that they should go and get expert help, whether it be NALAG, whether it be counsellors or whatever, because until you go and do that and talk about it, and you're not going to get that release of it. I can't explain what I mean by release, but in talking about it, you seem to accept it, and you feel much better in yourself. But I do honestly believe people need to go and get expert help and to talk.
Thank you, Joan and Jen, for that. Joan has been a great supporter of NALAG over the years, and our community is so grateful to have her openness and advocacy for suicide bereavement support. To anyone who has just joined us, welcome. You're watching NALAG's 2020 Suicide Prevention and Bereavement Support event, which will soon include a candlelight remembrance ceremony to remember those we have lost to suicide and to show our support for the ongoing work around suicide prevention and bereavement support. Time now to check in with Camilla Herbig, who is a Rural Mental Health Coordinator for RAMF, working across rural and remote New South Wales to educate, encourage and connect people with mental health support. I caught up with Camilla a little earlier. There's so much information out there, Camilla, about suicide. I'm just wondering whether you could help us understand some of the key facts involved.
Most certainly. So there is a lot of information and a lot of statistics out there around suicide. I think one of the key things to know is that the statistics say it's over 3,000 people every year die by suicide, and that boils down to about 8 people per day. When we put that into context as to what does that really mean or what does that look like, it's actually double the road toll of what we see in car accidents. So it is a huge problem within our communities. While of those, around 75% are actually male, which is a really frightening statistic, a lesser known fact is that around 65,000 people every year attempt to take their own lives. And of that, it's actually more women than men who attempt. So this is a really big issue for everyone in our communities. Now, while there are those statistics around how many people are attempting or completing suicide, a big part to understand is that there's the ripple effect into our communities of family members, friends, colleagues and neighbours who are all impacted by suicide. So this is a huge topic for everyone in our community.
So Camilla, I'm just wondering whether suicide prevention is really for the professional or whether the average person in the street can be involved. Do you have any examples where this happens?
I guess this is a really fabulous question because often for the lay person in the community, it can feel quite confronting to talk about suicide or to really bring up this topic. But I think we all have to play a role in the prevention of suicide and the discussions in a really supportive way. So while we've got some phenomenal services available to support those who are experiencing mental health problems, suicidal thoughts, have attempted or even bereaved or grieving, there's a role that we can all play within communities. A lot of it can come down to just the simple conversations around how are you doing or are you okay? Today is actually Are You Okay Day, and the theme for today and this year is what next after asking are you okay? So how to actually continue that conversation and what are the support services available? So I think as the lay person in the community, it's really important that we all understand how to have that conversation with someone we're concerned about and understand that it's not going to cause harm. You can't put the idea into someone's head around suicide, and more often than not, it's a really supportive and helpful conversation to be having with someone who might be having some pretty distressing thoughts.
Camilla, can you talk to us about the way COVID has impacted the way we connect with each other?
Absolutely. I think COVID has really highlighted how important it is to socially connect with one another, and we've been probably placing more effort and more emphasis on this. Because we've been physically distant, I think a lot more people have felt isolated, and both anecdotally from our own lives, but also in research, we've been seeing that's been a really common theme of people feeling isolated or feeling lonely. So I think there's been a lot more effort put into actually connecting with one another virtually. And so we've seen the absolute explosion of Zoom and various online platforms and people actively checking in on one another. And while I'm loath to say it, I think COVID has almost been a blessing in disguise for mental health promotion and suicide prevention strategies, because for something that we've been going on about for decades in terms of the importance of checking in on one another, starting conversations and looking after our mental health. We've been saying this for so long, and now it's a really important topic that's getting a lot of airtime and people are really putting a lot of emphasis on it. So I think COVID has been incredibly difficult for so many people, but has really helped to shine a light on how we can be supporting one another when we're physically distant, and the importance of social connection and touching base with one another to really have genuine conversations and listen, not just ask, are you okay, or how are you going, and not really sort of want to hear the answer, or too busy moving on to other busy parts of our lives.
And a big thanks to you, Camilla, for your time and for that great insight. To coincide with Are You OK Day today, RAMP has launched a new guide on having the conversation, which you can access on their website and social media. Let's now jump to Bruno Efoti, men's mental health advocate based in Dubbo, New South Wales, who I had the pleasure of chatting with earlier today.
Hi Bruno, just wondering whether you can tell us some of the lessons you've learned along the way with regard to men's mental health.
Yeah, thank you for having me on today. Since starting Tradies Inside, I have actually learned quite a few lessons and along the way. And I guess the main lesson that I have learned is that even though we have this space to actually care and cater for the need of our community, I have learned that there need to be a way in which we can engage men, especially, and that is finding out what actually works with them in helping them open up. Because at first, the first layer of, I guess, of the problem that we were facing was helping men admit that there is something that's wrong, and that they would like to find where that support that may be, and actually really engage them with that support. So the first barrier that we had to get through was that how do we actually help men open up? And I thought that was a disability, I guess, in our society, that even though we are a community of people and we have a lot of, I guess, a support around us, we're still individualistic society where we feel that we don't matter to other people. And therefore we keep those things that are close and dear to us really closely. And I feel that has become a wedge between the individuals and the society and support services. So I feel that the need was, how do we encourage men to open up? Because the silence has actually become a real problem, and it's ended up in the suicide. And as of now, as of the COVID-19, that is actually highlighted it more than ever, our need to open up and deal with the problem that we currently have. Yeah. So with my point of view, I knew that men love food, and it was one of the things that would help them open up and engage. And I found food was it was a silence breaker, if you like. Yeah. And so we decided that food was the breaker that they need to be able to help them move forward and open up and get the right help that they need. So we've engaged food in our events, and that has been working really well, which has given them the opportunity to open up and take charge of the problems that they have.
Yeah, hospitality is a great I guess conversation starter, people sitting around food. And that probably leads to the next question, Bruno. What are some of the proactive things that charities like yours can do or have been doing to support the wellbeing of community members?
I think we have a lot of services in town that are doing different things, and I think that they're very important when we all come together to support people at seeing ourselves as one big support instead of doing individual support. And I feel that every time we've come together with other services in town, the message is getting louder and clearer.
Yep.
And people are engaging in that because the whole of the town actually supports that message. And so I feel that it's very important that every time we do run an event, and whatever that outreach event may be, it's important that we all collaborate together because we stand for the same kind of message. And with that, I think people hear our voice a lot clearer and better.
So what's a message, Bruno, that you would like? I guess what's your main message that you would like to get out there about suicide prevention?
My main message is that people need to know that we're on this journey together, and then if something happens out there, we all share in that pain, because one way or the other, we all go through pain, and I want people to not feel that they're isolated. I want people to know that as a town, as a community, we feel their pain, and that should not be a shame or a stigma around those kind of issues, because we all go through it. So it's important for them to voice and to talk and share with others about their experiences, but also encourage others in their findings as well, in their pain, because I think it's important for others to know that if they are going through those kind of stages, it's important for them to understand that everybody else has some kind of journey on that, because we're related, or we know of some people that have had that kind of pain before. So we shouldn't have that shame or stigma around it, that we should be free to share that with others, and that would encourage and that would promote that kind of togetherness, but also that support that we so need for each other in this community.
Thanks, Bruno. It's great news to hear of the growing interest in supporting men to speak up on topics which many have considered taboo for such a long time. Okay, as we approach 8 p.m, it's now time to cross to Deb Todd-Kills, NALAG support coordinator, to lead us through the remembrance service. Please remember that this is a community event, and you are more than welcome to comment below and post a photo of your candle throughout the service.
When we lose someone to suicide, we often experience a very complicated form of grief, caused by a mixture of feelings, thoughts, and behaviours. It's so important to be able to discuss all of these reactions openly in order to fully understand and process our loss. There is no one right way to grieve. The circumstances, the intensity, and the duration of the grief is something unique to each of us. As many have come to learn, grief is a journey that changes over time, but doesn't necessarily end. Instead, we learn to accept, to remember, to honour, to grow. While grief is a unique experience for each of us, it doesn't necessarily need to be done alone. NALAG's Grief Support Service is continuing for New South Wales individuals, families and communities experiencing loss. Viewers outside New South Wales can find support services available to them by visiting healthdirect.gov.au. Tonight we come together to remember those we have lost to suicide, to share our grief and to provide hope. If you have a candle, you may now wish to light it as we share a moment of remembrance. We give ourselves permission to grieve, to express our feelings, and to continue to heal as we keep those we've lost in our hearts and in our memories.
Thank you, Debbie. That concludes this evening's event. We thank you all for joining with us on such an important occasion as we continue to improve awareness of suicide prevention and support services. All of the interviews and resources mentioned during tonight's event will be available on our website. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Until then, take care, keep connected, and remember, support is always available. Good night.